A warm welcome to everybody joining my channel. This is where wisdom begins and your journey matters. Becoming the wisest version of yourself is not a journey that begins with books or degrees or titles. It begins with a decision to listen more than you speak, a decision to reflect more than you react. It begins in the quiet moments when no one is watching, where your character is shaped by the thoughts you nurture and the choices you make. Wisdom isn't found in the noise of opinions or the flood of information. It's forged in the fire of self-discipline, humility, and an insatiable hunger to understand the deeper layers of life. The path to becoming wise starts when you stop pretending to know it all. You become wise when you admit how little you really know. That realization alone opens the doors to real learning. A fool seeks to be heard, but a wise person seeks to understand. Wisdom comes when you shift from asking, "How can I win?" to "What can I learn?" When you replace pride with curiosity, your mind becomes fertile ground for growth. Most people spend their lives defending their beliefs, arguing for their limitations, and repeating the same mistakes over and over. But the wisest people are those who constantly examine themselves. They question their patterns, their triggers, their fears, their desires. They don't fear being wrong because they know every mistake is a chance to become more aware. They don't attach their identity to their opinions. They evolve. The pursuit of wisdom requires that you learn to sit with discomfort. The discomfort of truth, the discomfort of failure, the discomfort of delayed gratification. It demands that you rise above the noise of the world and tune into something quieter but more powerful. Your conscience, your intuition, your inner compass. And that compass doesn't shout, it whispers. You have to get still to hear it. Becoming wise means being able to pause before reacting. It means asking yourself, is this the best response I can offer? Is this coming from ego or from truth? It means mastering your impulses, regulating your emotions, and delaying short-term pleasure for long-term peace. Wisdom teaches you that not everything requires your energy. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every opportunity is worth your time. You learn to say no, not out of fear, but out of focus. You stop chasing validation and start prioritizing alignment. You don't do what looks good, you do what feels right. And that requires brutal honesty with yourself. Wisdom also demands that you audit your environment. Who do you spend your time with? What do you feed your mind with? What kind of conversations do you entertain? Are you surrounded by people who challenge your thinking, or people who just echo your biases? If you want to grow in wisdom, you must be willing to outgrow relationships, environments, and mindsets that keep you small. You must learn to walk alone sometimes, because solitude is where clarity is born. In solitude, you meet the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. You begin to understand your motives, your pain, your patterns. You learn to forgive yourself and others, and that forgiveness is not a weakness. It's a form of emotional liberation. You let go not because they deserve peace, but because you do. Wisdom teaches you that carrying bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. You begin to realize that your energy is sacred, and the way you spend it determines the quality of your life. Becoming wise also means embracing change. Change in yourself, change in others, change in life. You stop resisting the seasons and start flowing with them. You stop clinging to the past and start trusting the unfolding. Because the truth is, life is not meant to be controlled. It's meant to be understood. And wisdom helps you make peace with that. It teaches you that your power is not in what happens to you, but in how you respond to it. The more you grow in wisdom, the less you blame, the less you complain, and the more you take responsibility. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a creator. You own your story. You rewrite your narrative. You choose your thoughts like you choose your clothes, with intention. You filter your speech. You observe more and judge less. You replace criticism with curiosity. Wisdom makes you a student of life, not a judge of others. You see pain not just as a burden, but as a teacher. You understand that every loss, every failure, every disappointment has the potential to shape you or shatter you, and that choice is always yours. Becoming the wisest version of yourself is a daily practice. It's built in the decisions you make when no one is watching, in the way you treat people who can do nothing for you, in the thoughts you entertain in moments of silence, in the humility you show when you're right, and the grace you extend when you're wrong. It's not about being perfect. It's about being committed to evolving, to unlearning, to rising above your limitations. It's about building a mind that is not just intelligent, but insightful. A heart that is not just kind, but courageous. And a soul that is not just curious, but conscious. Wisdom whispers when the world shouts. It guides you toward the path that is right, not easy. It reminds you that your life is a reflection of your inner world. So if you want to change your life, change your mind. Clean the windows through which you see the world. Because perspective is power, and wisdom gives you a lens of clarity, compassion, and calm. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop rushing and start reflecting. You stop proving and start improving. Every wise person was once foolish. Every master was once a beginner. So be patient with yourself. Give yourself permission to grow, to stumble, to get up, and to try again. The wisest people are not those who never fall. They're the ones who always rise with more understanding. They don't seek applause, they seek alignment. They don't chase attention, they chase truth. They don't cling to their ego. They let it die so something greater can live. If you want to become the wisest version of yourself, start by listening more, to others, to yourself, to life. Study human nature, study your emotions, study your triggers, reflect on your past, learn from every experience, and most importantly, apply what you learn. Because knowledge means nothing without application. Wisdom is the union of understanding and action. You become wise when your life becomes a reflection of the lessons you've learned, when your decisions are rooted in clarity and your presence brings peace to others, when your words carry weight not because they're loud, but because they're lived. That's the kind of wisdom that transforms not just your life, but the lives of everyone you touch. And that wisdom is already within you, waiting to be remembered, practiced, and lived. So start today. Listen more, reflect deeper, respond slower, love harder, judge less, forgive freely, and keep becoming. Not the loudest version of yourself, not the smartest, but the wisest. The version that sees clearly, chooses consciously, and lives courageously. The second step in becoming the wisest version of yourself is learning to master your internal dialogue, because the thoughts you allow to live in your mind shape the lens through which you see the world and yourself. You become what you consistently tell yourself you are. And wisdom teaches you to stop being your own enemy and start being your greatest ally. Most people are at war with themselves. They doubt themselves, sabotage their growth, compare their journey to others, and question their worth, but the wise learn to speak life into their own souls. They replace self-judgment with self-inquiry, and instead of asking, "Why am I not enough?" they ask, "What part of me still needs healing?" Wisdom teaches you that silence isn't weakness, it's strength. You don't always have to respond to criticism. You don't always have to defend yourself. Not every battle is worth your energy. Sometimes your peace is more important than being right. Because wisdom isn't about proving your intelligence. It's about preserving your energy for what truly matters. And in the process, you begin to discover the freedom that comes from inner stillness. You start to trust that truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be lived. And when your actions reflect your values, you no longer need to explain yourself. Your life becomes the evidence. Wisdom also teaches you emotional mastery to be wise. You must learn to observe your emotions without becoming them. Anger, fear, jealousy, envy, these are all natural, but reacting blindly to them is what keeps you stuck. The wise create space between stimulus and response. They feel their emotions fully, but they are not ruled by them. They ask, "What is this feeling trying to teach me?" instead of letting it drive them into chaos. They learn to respond with intention rather than react with impulse, because emotional control isn't about suppression. It's about awareness and regulation. The more emotionally intelligent you become, the more wisely you live, and this includes setting boundaries. Wisdom is not just about how you treat others, it's also about how you allow others to treat you. A wise person understands that boundaries are not walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. They're not about keeping people out, they're about protecting your peace and guiding the flow of respect. And if someone is offended by your boundaries, that's often a sign they benefited from you. Having none wisdom means walking away from what disturbs your inner balance. Even if that means disappointing others, the truth is you cannot grow if you're constantly trying to please everyone. Not everyone will understand your journey, not everyone is meant to, and that's okay. Your path is yours, and wisdom helps you stay committed to it. Regardless of the noise around you, it teaches you discernment to know what to hold on to and what to release, who to invest in, and who to distance from, where to step forward and where to step back. Becoming wise is not about acquiring more. It's about shedding the unnecessary. It's about simplifying your life so that what remains is aligned with your purpose and truth. And one of the most powerful traits of a wise person is humility. Not the false humility that denies your gifts, but the true humility that recognizes you are both gifted and growing at the same time. Wisdom knows that no matter how far you've come, there's always more to learn. There's always a new layer of truth to uncover. There's always someone who sees the world differently, and rather than seeing that as a threat, the wise see it as an opportunity to expand their perspective. Because wisdom doesn't build walls of certainty, it builds bridges of understanding. The more you learn, the more you realize how vast the unknown truly is. And this keeps you grounded, it keeps you curious, it keeps you open to growth. And another key to wisdom is developing patience. Not passive waiting, but active patience. The kind that understands timing is sacred and some things take time to unfold. You can't rush healing. You can't rush understanding. You can't rush mastery. The wise know that consistency beats intensity, slow progress is still progress. And often the greatest changes happen quietly beneath the surface before they're ever seen on the outside. They trust the process, not because it's easy, but because it's right, and they keep showing up even when no one claps, even when no one sees, even when nothing seems to be working, because they know every step matters, every small act compounds. And in time, the results always follow. Wisdom is also about legacy, not just what you leave behind when you die, but what you deposit into every moment while you're alive. It's about asking, how do I want to be remembered, not just by the world, but by the people I encounter daily? Did I uplift or did I diminish? Did I listen or did I dismiss? Did I leave others better than I found them, or did I take more than I gave? The wisest people live as though everything they do echoes beyond their lifetime, because it does. Every word, every action, every choice is a ripple. And wisdom teaches you to be mindful of the energy you bring into every space, to leave places, people, and situations more whole than you found them. Wisdom also means learning to let go, letting go of the need to control, letting go of the past, letting go of expectations that keep you anxious. Because control is an illusion, and the more you try to force life to go your way, the more resistance you create. But when you let go, not in defeat but in trust, you begin to flow with life rather than fight against it. And that's where your real power lies, not in force but in flow. Wisdom is knowing when to act and when to surrender, when to push and when to pause, when to speak and when to remain silent. It's the dance between will and acceptance, action and stillness, effort and ease. And the only way to learn this dance is by living, paying attention, reflecting and adjusting along the way. Because wisdom is not a destination, it's a rhythm. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you make decisions, the way you treat people when no one is looking. And another core aspect of wisdom is compassion. True wisdom cannot exist without compassion, because understanding the world without loving, it will only make you bitter. But when you see clearly and love deeply, you become a force of healing in a world that desperately needs it. Compassion for others and compassion for yourself. You forgive your flaws without excusing them. You hold yourself accountable without condemning yourself. You encourage your growth without shaming your past, and you extend the same grace to others, because everyone is fighting battles you cannot see. And wisdom reminds you to lead with empathy, not assumption, to be gentle with people and firm with your values, to uplift with truth and correct with kindness, because how you deliver your truth matters as much as the truth itself. The wisest people don't use their knowledge as a weapon. They use it as a bridge. They don't talk down to others. They meet them where they are and lift them higher. Becoming the wisest version of yourself also means embracing solitude, not as loneliness, but as sacred space. Because in solitude, you hear the whispers of your soul. You process, you recharge, you reconnect with what truly matters. And you remember that your worth is not tied to constant productivity or external praise. Wisdom gives you permission to rest, not as a reward, but as a necessity. It teaches you that doing less with more purpose is more powerful than doing more with no direction. Because the wise value depth over speed, substance over appearance, presence over performance, and in a world that glorifies noise, they find their strength in silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because they choose to speak only when it adds value. Not when it adds volume. Wisdom is about becoming so deeply rooted in your values that no storm can uproot your peace. It's about building an inner fortress that protects your clarity in a world that thrives on confusion. It's about living intentionally so that every step you take reflects who you truly are and not who the world pressures you to be. You don't chase trends, you chase truth. You don't seek to impress, you seek to impact. You don't fear change, you embrace evolution, because the wise understand that change is not the enemy, it's the vehicle of transformation. And they ride it with grace, faith, and purpose. They know that everything life throws at them is either a blessing or a lesson, and often both. And so they show up with courage, they make peace with uncertainty, they keep moving forward even with trembling hands and a beating heart. And in doing so, they inspire others to do the same. They become light in darkness, anchors in storms, and reminders that wisdom is not about being perfect, but about being present, authentic, and whole in a world that often encourages the opposite. Becoming the wisest version of yourself means rising above the superficial layers of life and diving into the depths of your soul. Where the real answers live, it means looking past appearances and status and surface-level success and asking the questions most people are too afraid to ask. Who am I beneath my achievements? What drives me when no one's watching? What pain am I still carrying that I pretend isn't there? What stories am I telling myself that limit my potential? What fears control my choices without me even realizing it? Wisdom begins where self-deception ends. It begins when you stop running from your shadows and start understanding them. When you stop numbing your pain and start listening to what it's teaching you. Because the truth is, every wound has wisdom hidden inside it, if you're willing to feel it and face it and sit with it long enough to learn from it. And the process of becoming wise is rarely glamorous. It's not about being right all the time or looking enlightened. It's about wrestling with your own darkness and choosing to evolve anyway. It's about taking ownership of your flaws without letting them define you. It's about choosing growth over comfort again and again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Wisdom is forged in those silent battles you fight within yourself. The battles no one sees, the ones between your higher self and your lower impulses. Between who you've been and who you're becoming, between what's easy and what's right. And the wise understand that strength doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it looks like restraint. Sometimes it's choosing to stay calm when chaos erupts around you. Sometimes it's choosing to listen when you'd rather speak, or forgive when you'd rather hold a grudge. Because wisdom is not loud, it's steady, it's not flashy, it's consistent. It's not about winning arguments. It's about winning peace with yourself and with life. The wisest people you'll ever meet are rarely the ones shouting the loudest. They're the ones you feel safe around, the ones who listen deeply, speak intentionally, and act with integrity. Even when no one's watching, they are grounded not in pride but in principle. They don't need to show off because they know who they are. And that self-awareness is one of the pillars of wisdom, to know your strengths without arrogance and your weaknesses without shame. To know what triggers you and why, to know when you're projecting old wounds onto new people or letting your ego masquerade as truth. To be wise is to be so tuned into yourself that you catch the lie before it becomes your identity, the spiral before it becomes your reality, the emotion before it becomes your decision, because wisdom gives you a pause between thought and action. A breath of clarity before the reaction, and in that pause is power. The power to choose differently, to respond with intention, to rewrite the script you've been repeating for years. And that power is where transformation begins. But wisdom is not just internal, it's also relational. It shows up in how you treat others, especially those who disagree with you or trigger you or fail you. Wisdom teaches you that every person is fighting invisible battles. And the more you judge, the less you understand. The more you assume, the less you connect. Wisdom teaches you to listen without preparing a response, to disagree without disrespect, to correct without condemning, to love without controlling. Because true wisdom values connection over being right, growth over being comfortable, and understanding over ego. And it's in your relationships that your inner work is tested. Anyone can feel enlightened when they're alone, But real wisdom shows up in the way you respond. When your patience is tested, your values are challenged, your heart is broken. Do you default to blame, or do you pause for reflection? Do you escalate or de-escalate? Do you feed the fire or create space for healing? The wise don't avoid conflict, but they don't feed it either. They use it as a mirror to see where growth is needed, where boundaries are lacking, where communication must improve. They don't ghost when it's uncomfortable. They communicate with clarity and grace because they understand that maturity isn't avoiding tough conversations. It's having them with love and listening with an open heart. And sometimes wisdom means walking away not out of bitterness, but out of respect for your peace, because not every connection is meant to last, and not every person can meet you at the level you're growing into. And that's okay. Wisdom helps you grieve what you lose without losing yourself. It teaches you to close chapters with gratitude, not resentment, because every person, every season, every lesson shaped you into who you are. And you honor that by letting go with grace. Becoming the wisest version of yourself also means learning how to hold paradox, how to sit in the tension of joy and grief, hope and doubt, clarity and confusion without rushing to resolve it. Wisdom isn't always about answers. Sometimes it's about being at peace with not knowing. It's understanding that life is complex and growth is messy and healing is nonlinear. It's choosing to remain open-hearted even after you've been hurt, to keep showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, to keep loving, even when it's risky, because the alternative is a closed life, a small life, a life ruled by fear. And the wise don't choose fear. They choose courage, not because they're fearless, but because they know what's on the other side of fear is freedom. And they've tasted that freedom in moments when they broke patterns and faced truths and chose to evolve, and they want more of that freedom. So they keep going, they keep growing, they keep choosing the path of wisdom, even when it's lonely, even when it's slow, even when it's invisible to the world, because they know this path leads to a kind of fulfillment no money or fame or status could ever match. The fulfillment of living in alignment, of becoming the kind of person your younger self would look up to, and your future self would thank you for. A person who lives with intention, speaks with purpose, acts with love, and walks in truth. The wisest version of yourself isn't some distant, perfect ideal. It's who you become every time you choose growth over ego, presence over distraction, depth over performance, and purpose over validation. It's who you are when you stop trying to impress and start trying to impact, when you stop asking, how do I look, and start asking, who am I becoming, when you stop living for applause and start living for alignment. And every moment offers you a choice to take a step toward that version of yourself or away from it. And the beautiful thing is, it's never too late to begin again. Wisdom is not reserved for the old or the educated. It's available to anyone who chooses to learn, reflect, grow, and apply. You can start becoming wise today by slowing down, by paying attention, by listening more, by asking deeper questions, by being honest with yourself about what's working and what's not, and by having the courage to change it. Because wisdom is not found in avoiding mistakes, it's found in what you do after them. It's not found in the absence of pain, but in the way you rise from it again and again and again, stronger, clearer, and more conscious each time. That's what becoming the wisest version of yourself truly means. It's not about perfection, it's about progression. It's about showing up as the most honest version of yourself in every moment, and letting that honesty guide your growth. And in doing so, you don't just change your own life, you become a light for others. You lead by example, not by control. You inspire by embodiment. Not by instruction, you teach not with words, but with presence. And the world doesn't just need more knowledge, it needs more wisdom. It needs more people who live what they know, who lead with heart, who act with integrity, and who remind us all that there is another way to live, a deep way, a wiser way. And you have the power to become that reminder, not by being louder, but by being truer, not by being perfect, but by being real, not by knowing it all, but by choosing to learn every day for the rest of your life. The deeper you go into becoming the wisest version of yourself, the more you realize that life is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Everything you experience, every challenge, every joy, every moment of stillness or chaos is shaping you, refining you, revealing parts of yourself that were once hidden or asleep. Wisdom opens your eyes to the patterns you've inherited and the choices you've made unconsciously. It helps you step out of autopilot and into intentional living. It teaches you to ask not just what am I doing, but why am I doing it? Who is this version of me that reacts this way, that thinks this way, that believes this way? And is that truly who I want to be? Or is it just who I've been taught to be? Because becoming wise means you begin to unlearn as much as you learn. You begin to question the rules, the narratives, the expectations, the roles you've been assigned, and you start creating a life that's aligned not with external validation, but with internal truth. And that kind of life often looks very different from what the world tells you is successful. It might be quieter, it might be slower, it might be less visible, but it will be richer, fuller, deeper, and more meaningful. Because wisdom isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's about subtracting everything that distracts you from your essence. It's about living simply, not because you have to, but because you understand the power of focus, the value of presence, the beauty of enough. The wisest people don't chase everything, they choose carefully. They say no, often not out of fear but out of clarity, because they know that every yes is a no to something else, and they protect their time, energy, and peace like sacred resources. And this kind of intentionality doesn't happen by accident. It comes from reflection, from solitude, from slowing down long enough to hear your own inner voice in a world that is constantly screaming at you to be more. Do more, buy more, post more, compare more. The wise unplug. They step back, they breathe, they ask, what do I really want? What really matters to me? Not what looks good on paper or gets the most likes or keeps people impressed, but what brings me peace, what brings me joy, what brings me closer to my highest self. And then they build their lives around that. And that takes courage, because the path of wisdom is not always the popular one. It's not the path of the crowd, it's the path of consciousness, of alignment, of depth. It requires you to walk away from what no longer resonates, even if it's familiar, even if others don't understand. It requires you to grieve the parts of yourself that you've outgrown, the beliefs, the relationships, the roles that kept you safe but also kept you small. And it requires you to embrace uncertainty, because stepping into your truth will always involve letting go of what was and trusting what could be. And trust is one of the greatest signs of wisdom, not blind faith but conscious surrender. The kind that says, I may not know how this will unfold, but I trust myself to navigate it. I trust life to guide me. I trust that whatever happens, I have the strength and resilience to grow through it. And that kind of trust doesn't come from never falling. It comes from falling and rising enough times to know that you'll always find your way. It comes from knowing that you are not defined by your failures, but refined by them. And that every time you rise with more understanding, you are becoming wiser, stronger, more whole. Becoming the wisest version of yourself also means developing a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the good, but for the lessons in the hard moments too. The wise don't see life as happening against them. They see life as happening for them. They find meaning in the mess, purpose, in the pain, insight, in the struggle. They don't waste time wishing things were different. They ask, what is this teaching me? What is life trying to show me through this experience? How can I grow from this? And that shift in perspective changes everything. It turns obstacles into teachers' wounds, into wisdom, endings into new beginnings. And it creates a mindset that is resilient, resourceful, and deeply rooted in purpose and gratitude. Doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing to see what's still good, what's still working, what's still beautiful, even in the storm. It's the ability to hold both grief and gratitude, joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, and to stay grounded through it all, because you understand that this too shall pass, and whatever it is you're facing now is just one chapter in a much bigger story. A story that you are actively writing with every choice you make, and wisdom is choosing to write a story you'll be proud of, one filled with integrity, kindness, resilience, truth, and love. And love is another pillar of wisdom. Not the romantic kind, but the universal kind. The kind that sees humanity in every person. The kind that leads with compassion. The kind that chooses understanding over judgment, connection over comparison, contribution over competition. The wisest people are not those who know the most, but those who love the deepest, who make others feel seen and safe and valued, who use their strength to uplift, not dominate, who speak life, not fear, who hold space for others to be real, raw, and human, because they know how healing that space can be, because they've needed it too. And the more you grow in wisdom, the more you realize we are all connected. Your healing affects others. Your growth inspires others. Your presence impacts the energy of every room you walk into. And that kind of responsibility humbles you. It makes you more intentional, more aware, more mindful of the energy you carry and the impact you leave. And so you begin to carry yourself with more grace. You choose your words more carefully, you listen more deeply, you love more fully, and you stop needing to control how others see you, because you're more concerned with how you see yourself and whether or not you're proud of the person you're becoming. And pride in this sense is not ego, it's integrity, it's alignment. It's knowing that you are walking your path with courage and authenticity, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when no one notices, because you didn't choose this path for applause. You chose it for peace, for truth, for freedom. And the freedom that comes from living in alignment is worth every sacrifice, every discomfort, every ending it requires. And the more you taste that freedom, the more committed you become to protecting it, to nurturing it, to sharing it with others. Not by preaching, but by living, by being a quiet but powerful example of what it means to live wisely. And that example speaks louder than any words ever could. People will feel your energy, your presence, your peace, and they will wonder what changed. And that's when you can smile, not from superiority, but from sincerity, and say, I just stopped running, I stopped pretending, I stopped living for everyone else, and started living for what truly matters to me. I faced my fears, I owned my flaws, I let go of what wasn't serving me, and I started becoming someone I actually respect. And that's the real reward of wisdom, not what you gain on the outside, but who you become on the inside. The clarity, the peace, the confidence, the calm, the depth, the joy. And once you've tasted that, no surface level pleasure can compare. Because the wisest version of yourself is not found in some distant future. It's built in the present moment, in the choices you make today, in the thoughts you allow, the words you speak, the energy you bring into every situation. It's built in your habits, your routines, your intentions, your reflections. It's built in the way you treat yourself and the way you treat others, and the way you handle the highs and the lows with grace and groundedness. And the truth is, this journey never ends. There is no final destination, no point where you say, I've arrived, because life keeps evolving. And so do you, and wisdom is staying open to that evolution, embracing it, allowing it, flowing with it, and showing up every day with humility and hunger to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep becoming. And that is the most powerful commitment you can make, the commitment to your own inner mastery, the commitment to becoming the wisest, most aligned, most authentic version of yourself. No matter what the world says, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many times you fall, because that version of you is already inside, waiting to be remembered, reclaimed, embodied, and lived every single day and every single choice with every single breath. The final step in becoming the wisest version of yourself is understanding that wisdom is not a destination, but a state of being. It is not something you achieve once and for all. It is something you carry into every moment, every decision, every interaction. It lives in the way you breathe through conflict, the way you sit with silence, the way you honor your truth and still hold space for others. It is not about being above others, but being deeply grounded within yourself. It is not about always knowing what to do, but trusting that even in uncertainty, you will figure it out. Wisdom is learning to let go with love, to hold on with grace, and to walk away with peace. It is choosing to be kind when it would be easier to be cruel. It is choosing patience when the world demands urgency. It is choosing stillness when noise surrounds you. Becoming wise means no longer needing to be understood by everyone, because you finally understand yourself. You stop chasing answers outside and begin listening within. You stop waiting for permission and begin walking in purpose. You stop reacting to life and start co-creating with it. Every wise soul reaches a point where they realize the greatest gift they can give the world is the most authentic version of themselves. Not a masked version, not a performative version, not a version edited for approval, but the raw, real, radiant essence of who they truly are. Becoming wise means breaking your own cycles, not because someone told you to, but because you've seen how those patterns keep you small, how they disconnect you from your power, how they whisper lies that you are not enough. And wisdom answers with a steady voice. Yes, you are more than enough. Not because you're perfect, but because you're aware, you're awake. You're willing to grow, you're willing to do the inner work that others avoid, you're willing to look in the mirror and ask hard questions and tell yourself the truth, and then do something about it. Wisdom makes you brave, brave enough to admit when you're wrong, brave enough to love again after heartbreak, brave enough to say no without guilt, and yes without fear, brave enough to live life on your terms. Not the life others expect from you. Not the life that looks good on the outside, but the life that feels right on the inside. Because the more you grow in wisdom, the more you realize that peace is the real success. Freedom is the real luxury, and alignment is the real wealth. You can have everything the world says you should want and still feel empty. If you're not being true to yourself, wisdom helps you redefine success from the inside out. It teaches you to measure your life not by how much you have, but by how deeply you feel, how honestly you live, how fully you show up. It is the courage to slow down in a world that glorifies burnout, to say, I am enough, even when you're told you need more, to rest without guilt, to speak without fear, to listen without judgment, and to live with presence in a world constantly pulling you into distraction. Wisdom makes you see how sacred each moment is, how temporary everything is, and how precious it all become. When you're awake to it, you begin to cherish the little things, the sound of laughter, the warmth of sunlight, the stillness of early mornings, the peace of being alone, but not lonely, the strength of letting go, and the joy of letting go. And you realize that wisdom isn't in having all the answers, but in asking the right questions. Who do I want to be? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? What energy do I want to bring into this world? How can I serve? How can I grow? How can I live today so that tomorrow I feel no regret and no resentment, only reverence for the life I chose to live? You begin to see time differently, not as something to spend, but something to honor, not as something to chase, but something to cherish. You stop racing and start savoring. You stop striving and start aligning. You understand that every breath is borrowed, every heartbeat is a blessing, and that the wisest way to live is with open eyes, open hands, and an open heart, open to change, open to grace, open to love, open to whatever life brings. Because life will never go as planned, but that doesn't mean it won't be beautiful. And the wise know how to find beauty even in the broken places, even in the detours and delays, even in the disappointments and doubts. They know how to extract meaning from the mess, how to turn pain into purpose, how to stay soft in a hard world and steady in a shaking one. Because they've built their strength from the inside, they've anchored their identity not in roles or status or opinions, but in values. And character and soul, and no storm can take that from them. That kind of wisdom becomes a light, not just for yourself, but for everyone you meet. It becomes a refuge for those lost in noise, a reminder for those who've forgotten, a mirror for those who want to see themselves more clearly. And the most powerful thing is, you don't need to say a word. People will feel it in your presence, in your calm, in your clarity, in the way you carry yourself, in the way you look. People in the eyes, in the way you listen without interrupting, in the way you speak, without performing, in the way you love, without conditions, and live without compromise. Because once you become the wisest version of yourself, you don't just live differently, you become different. You embody what others only preach. You walk the talk not to prove anything, but because it's who you are now and who you've always been, beneath the layers, beneath the fear, beneath the programming. The wisest you has always been there, waiting patiently for you to remember, waiting for you to return, waiting for you to choose truth over illusion, awareness over avoidance, freedom over fear. So now you rise, now you choose. Now you walk in it with quiet power, with gentle strength, with humble certainty and unshakable peace. You are no longer reactive, you are responsive. You are no longer desperate, you are discerning. You are no longer scattered, you are grounded. You are no longer performing, you are present. You no longer need to chase love because you are love. You no longer need to seek validation because you are your own witness. And that is the ultimate wisdom, not to become someone new, but to finally become who you were always meant to be, free, awake, whole, and wise. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories and life-changing insights. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment that could inspire your journey. Your support means everything. Thank you for being part of this community.